All right, let's get to it.
All right, exciting step. We're actually ready to start cutting the joinery on this bar stool project. Well, actually not quite. This is my demo one that I've mocked up, and I just want to show you real quick. There's actually one more thing you need to do before we can cut this, and that is stand everything up, lay everything back out as it will be when it's assembled, and add a 1 or a 2 to each of your letters. So you guys can see here how I've done that. I've got A1 and A2. And on this one I got B1, B2, and you guys are going to do that actually for all of your joints, okay? C1, C2, and so on. Okay, that's really important for the next step because we actually cut those joints slightly differently. Okay, so get that out of the way. So we're going to be on the table saw. This is a special finger joint jig that I've built and set up for doing just exactly this process. Because the finger joint that we're doing is so deep, like this is the largest finger joint I've ever cut, unfortunately we need to do it in three passes, 3 cuts. We just can't take 2 1/8 inch cut like all at one go. It burns and it smokes and it's not good for anybody. So we're going to do it in 3 passes. We're going to start off with the blade set at 3/4 of an inch. Then the next time it'll be about 1.5 inches, and then for the final one we'll finish it off with basically in the entire way right up till the blade stops. That's where everyone's going to end up. Okay, so this thing will be jacked right as far as it goes for the 3rd pass. Okay, so Kyle's got all his boards all set up here, and he has them all labeled so we can see where the joint's going to be cut, right? He's got his lines here for where the finger joint is. This one happens to be G2, and that's fine. Okay, so I want to start actually with the 1s. So actually he's got one here. This is I1, and it shows where the joint's going to be cut. This is why it's so important to do such a good job labeling this, because when we get back to the machine here now and our boards are kind of in a pile, we don't want to be guessing what we're doing. Okay, so here we go. Basically how we're going to use this jig is I'm going to do all my 1s first. So 1s, and the instructions are right here on the jig that I've made. 1s face toward the blade. This is important. Okay, so this face right here will face in the jig toward the blade. Okay, not only that, but it's going to butt right up against this little pin. Okay, it's going to butt up tight against there. And let it kind of come to rest on the table so that it sits perfectly square. Try not to influence it one way or the other. Let it sit flat on the table and then just come up and pinch it nice and snug against the grippy sandpaper here on the jig. Pinch it nice and tight up against the backstop of the fence here while we run this thing through. Okay? There is a technique to using this thing. Okay? Slow, smooth. That helps make accuracy. So I'm going to go ahead and make my first cut, and then so I'll explain to you how this is going to go. I'm going to bump it over. So every slot that I cut, I'm going to use this pin here to index it and keep on going over until my board's fully cut. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so there we go. So now I've done the first pass on my 1. So if I was Kyle, and he's going to do this, he's going to take all of his boards, every joint that has a 1, he's going to do the same thing on. Okay, he's going to put it in here, bump it up tight against the pin, slowly come down, land on it, pinch it tight against the fence, boom, 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 until he ends up with joints cut all the way through just like that. He's going to do that on all of the ones. All right, guys, so we have actually at this point, so I have 2 of my ones cut. All right, Kyle's going to do that on all his other ones, but I just want to show you on the video here first how we're going to go about cutting the number 2s, because it's a little bit different. And it says on the instructions here that I've written down, 2s face toward the jig this time. So that's where things are changing. And we must use a full pin spacer for the first cut on the number 2 board. So what's happening here is if this was the same joint, if we cut 1s and 2s the same way, they don't go together, right? They are like the same joint. So we need to stagger the 2s and actually make a spacer and make a void where we had the pin on the first one so that they fit together like this, except that the boards are lining up, if that makes sense. Okay? So what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to position. So Kyle's got his C2. So now, just like I've written on the instructions here, 2s face toward the jig. So this way, time it's going this way. Now this time, instead of putting it right against the pin, we're going to take our 1 and take the first full pin, and we're going to flip that around and make sure that that first full pin actually sits over top of that pin, or the pin on the jig. Okay, that way when I go to cut this number 2, okay, so just to kind of quickly recap what I did there is the first pin that I cut was acting like a spacer, right? So this one went in toward the jig, just like my number 2 went in toward the jig, but because I had that spacer there, my first cut happened right on the outside edge rather than leaving a pin there. That way, when this joint goes together, it now fits flush instead of having the 2 pins meet and bump into each other, right? So that's the important part. So just a couple of quick points about using the jig. Again, slow and smooth, pinch it tight here, and there is a block here so you can't go too far, but you never want to have your hands at the back here in any way in case the block came off and that's where the blade is. Okay, the jig works really well. It's heavy, it's solid. That's it. Slow and smooth. All right? That's it.